Welcome to Healthy Living. I'm Lori Johnson. Thanks for joining us. Today we are talking about the dangers of marijuana, a drug a lot of people don't think is dangerous at all. My guest is Zach Plant, who is recovering from cannabis-induced psychosis. Zach, thank you so much for being here today and for sharing your story. You know, cannabis-induced psychosis is a term many people have never even heard of. This is something you experienced a couple of years ago. And so can you tell people, first of all, what is cannabis-induced psychosis?
Right. Yeah. Thank you for having me on the show, Lori. In my experience, cannabis-induced psychosis is something that happened from me smoking way too much marijuana. And it triggered my brain to go into a mode where, I was very manic, had very manic thinking, and then a lot of paranoid thinking in a short amount of time. And I believe that it's more common in people with mental health issues, but I think that anyone is susceptible. And just in my experience, it's very scary for the loved one involved, and it's very scary for the whole family, because it's just something that you don't know if you're susceptible to such a thing. There are people who can smoke their entire lives and do every day and never have any issues. And then there are people like me where in a very short period of time, my life is suddenly in danger, and no one could have saw it coming.
And when you say your life was in danger, in what way could you have died?
Right. So I had, thoughts of other people wanting to hurt me, thoughts of the only way of being safe was to end my own life. It went very quickly to suicidal thinking, and then I went to operate a vehicle and was just in a total blackout, and don't remember getting to where I needed to go, but somehow just ending up there. And I do have like brief memories of swerving on the road and things like that. And it's really just a miracle that I'm still alive after an experience like that.
And this was not something that happened to you just one day, even though there was sort of a peak, a culmination of all this, where you were hospitalized in a regular hospital and then transferred to a mental hospital. But, you were talking about some of the symptoms. A lot of people watching might be like, wait a second, how do you know if you're experiencing this cannabis-induced psychosis? And you said you had manic episodes and also paranoid. Can you kind of drill down and describe exactly what a manic episode is?
Of course. I can really only talk about it from my experience, of course. But from how it happened to me was, I had just decided to use this marijuana one day. And, just, I don't know what it was. I know that my tolerance was really, really high. I knew that I would have to, smoke more at this point, just to feel the effects for maybe 30 minutes to an hour. When at first, I could smoke one time and the effects would last for several hours. And so my tolerance had been so high at that point, that I was ingesting a lot more. At this point, it was just one night. This manic episode led to me, thinking that I had all the answers. And it sounds really, really crazy because it was super skewed thinking. And so my manic episode was, thinking that I had all these answers for like what was, I guess, wrong in the world. And obviously we don't live in a perfect world, but I thought that, I had all the answers for this, and that, like trying to, I don't know, I guess make someone else understand exactly what that's like whenever they're not there, would be really difficult, because it is just crazy, the things that I was believing, just grandiose, I think, is a good word to describe it. Thinking that, I'm having all of these epiphanies and my eyes are so open to all these things, and these are big, great thoughts that I'm having, when in all reality, you know, they weren't, they weren't all that special. My mind was just believing that, that I don't even know how to describe it, really, but, skewed thinking for sure, thinking that I could solve the world's problems. There was at a certain point I thought that, I could, achieve these crazy dreams, like, become a professional kicker in like the NFL, when that was never something that I had ever contemplated or planned on doing. It was just like, I can do this and I can do this like soon. And it caused me to, I don't know, just really fantasize about that. And it's not out of the realm of possibility, but I was giving it serious thought. And that lasted for a little bit, the manic thinking, until the paranoid thinking came in, which was, people want to hurt me because I'm having these great thoughts. And I've seen other people who struggle with this. Their mania, their paranoia manifests itself in different ways. They may keep it all to themselves. They may be very outspoken about it. I know a good friend of mine, and he wouldn't share any of his paranoid thinking with anyone, or any of his manic thinking, the crazy ideas that he had. While for me, I was telling anyone who would listen. It just ended up putting my life in harm's way very, very quickly.
Well, it sounds like the fact that you did share your honestly very bizarre thoughts, the fact that you were sharing those with people who were sober could have saved your life, because wasn't it your mother who recognized you were acting so strangely and took you to the hospital? Correct me if I'm wrong.
No, you're totally right. I mean, the biggest thing is that people were able to recognize that because I was being outspoken, and that goes with any issue. You can't get help for something that you won't talk about. Definitely. And I was fortunate enough to be one of those people who was able to speak about it. And then since then, I've been able to speak about a lot of things that I struggle with, and it's led to me getting a lot of help for those things. And like you said in the beginning, recovering from this cannabis-induced psychosis is very scary. But being open and honest about it is what led to me getting on the right medications at first, and led to me opening up with people and healing emotionally, so that I could really get through it, and change could actually take place in my life.
Well, I really want to get into what your recovery has been like. It's a very hopeful story. It's a very informative story. It can apply to a lot of people. But before we get to that point, just wanted to talk a little bit more about the buildup to your hospitalization, both in the regular hospital and then also the mental hospital. You actually became addicted, severely addicted to marijuana. And again, a lot of people really don't think marijuana is that addictive. Can you talk about how
Right.
it sort of your, habit kind of grew?
Right. So in my case, I when I'm being honest, I could look back at the patterns of my life and see that, I've been addicted to several things before it ever got to any kind of substance. And a lot of people do have addictive personalities. And in my case, I did have an addictive personality, and it manifested itself in any number of ways that, I won't really get into. But it was parents' divorce. It was, having parents absent in my life as a kid, not really feeling like I fit in, having low self-esteem, having these insecurities and anxiety and all these things that, it was only a matter of time before I was looking to find some kind of relief. And at a certain point, it got so hard to cope with that, whenever I eventually happened upon marijuana, that really took the edge off like nothing else could. And I tried alcohol at that point. I tried, even being in relationships with people can take the edge off to a certain extent. But I had never felt anything in my life that felt quite like that. And so even though it started, slowly at first, maybe once a week, a couple of times a week in the very beginning, as soon as, stressors would come in, I would be getting off work, or I knew that I had this assignment due at college or whatever. it just sounded like a great idea. Like I would much rather be high than be sober because I could still feel basically. And so in my case, over a span of 9 months, um, it went from maybe a couple times a week all the way to several times a day, as often as I could.
Wow.
Yeah,
That's pretty
and
serious.
it is, and I believe that it's people who have stressors in their life that they can't deal with.
Hmm.
I didn't have the coping mechanisms to deal with that,
Right, but now
and
you do. Yeah,
right,
now we're gonna take a quick break and get right back to that. The road to recovery is very informational and also inspirational as well. We're gonna take a quick break and be right back talking to Zach Plant, who is recovering from cannabis-induced psychosis. Stay with us. Welcome back to Healthy Living. Today we're talking about the dangers of marijuana. My guest, Zach Plant, who is recovering from cannabis-induced psychosis. So, Zach, you were talking about how you became addicted to marijuana, the mania, the paranoia, and finally you were hospitalized and then transferred to a mental hospital and then put on antipsychotic medication. Can you take it from there?
right. So I had been admitted to an emergency room, got stabilized overnight. I went and I talked to my mom the morning after getting out of that hospital, and she realized that I still was not doing all right, and then was immediately taken to the mental hospital and administered with a mood stabilizer and an antipsychotic medication. Um, and I remember I was there for about a week. Um, in my case, I believe that the mood stabilizer and the antipsychotic medication was a big help in order to just get my mind right. Um, they did see a lot of progress in my 5 or 6 days that I was there. And so it was enough to, be discharged from the mental hospital. But, right, that's only such a small beginning. I mean, think about all the emotional work that has to be done. you know um, Medication wasn't going to fix this problem that I was numbing from, and all these issues. Medication was just going to get my head right to a point to where I could begin. And I didn't understand the severity of that at first. I really didn't. They said, Zach, you could have, this could be your first manic episode of bipolar. But there were just so many things happening at that point that I didn't know. People around me, psychiatrists, didn't really know what was happening. We just knew that I went manic and got paranoid after smoking marijuana. I calmed down a little bit after being medicated, but we needed to take things super, super slow in order to just figure out what was happening and what to do going forward. And so I remember people talking to me, if you smoke marijuana again, there's a chance that you don't come out of psychosis. You go back into it, and your brain may never recover. And I really didn't want to believe that. I really wanted to believe that this was just a fluke, and I could keep using because all these emotions started rushing back, and it was really, really hard for me to start dealing with that. And my head was going crazy. My anxiety was bad. I had tons of fear. And I just, I couldn't sit still. I was restless without something like a fix. We call it a fix, without something to cope with. And luckily, I just had a support system around me that was able to realize the severity of my situation and really, really push me to continue the journey of recovery that I kind of already started on just by going to the hospital, being medicated, and just stressing the fact that this wasn't going to go away, that marijuana wasn't going to fix this. And so it took a lot of being honest with myself and a lot of being honest with other people as well.
I was watching your YouTube testimonial, which, by the way, is fantastic, and I highly recommend people go and watch it. It's over an hour long, but you did say that the recovery group is really what helped you and get sober and stay sober. And it's sort of like AA. Can you talk about that group?
Right. Yeah. So I'm still involved in a community where um, it's other individuals who struggle with similar problems as myself. Whether it's people who their coping mechanism chose self-harm, they chose drinking too much, they chose just crazy outlandish behavior to where they were getting in fights, anger issues, things like that. Mine just happened to manifest itself in marijuana. And so being around individuals who understand, in a community like that.
We're going to take another quick break and pick up right where we left off with Zach Plant talking about his road to recovery from marijuana addiction. Stay with us. Welcome back. We are continuing our discussion with Zach Plant about recovering from marijuana addiction. You said you were in a wonderful community group, sort of like AA. What is the name of it in case other people watching this might also feel the need to join a similar community?
Well, right. So we're huge on anonymity in recovery and not, not just putting everyone's information out there and everything like that. I'm all right with it, but just not having talked to them before. It's something called an APG. It's an alternative peer group. There are other things like it called sober livings, halfway houses. It just has to be researched. Mine specifically, I found out word of mouth, and there happened to be several around the Houston area. Mine specifically is called Cornerstone, but there are other ones called Teen and Family, and there's also some other ones. Some of them have come and gone. There's one called ALP. It's the Adventure Learning Program, which is more of an outdoorsy type. But yeah, there's just so many different resources for things like that for people to find help. And I got very fortunate to end up in a place like I did.
And it sounds like one of the keys to successful recovery is recognizing why you wanted to use in the first place and deal with those things. And you mentioned in your own case, it was not being able to talk about your emotions. And so now you really freely express your emotions with other people, which is wonderful.
Right. Yeah. I mean, that's easily one of the biggest things, something that I didn't know I needed to do, something I didn't know how to do. And I had a lot of denial about that area of my life, but it turns out that was a huge piece missing. And I just had to find some people that I trusted, that I knew would accept me, and share openly with them. And it's opened so many doors for me.
Do you ever run across very many other people who have been addicted to marijuana?
All the time. Specifically in recovery, like I had said, their emotional issues manifest themselves in many ways to cope, but marijuana comes along with most of those people, and it either started there or it was a big part of the process, and I come across people in my everyday life who can't really go by without it, can't get off work without doing it, can't go into work without doing it. I see it all the time. And people talk pretty openly about it because they don't see it as much of an issue. And I kind of keep my opinions to myself. But for me, it was detrimental. And I don't think anybody can really know if it will have that effect on them. And so it's very risky to do.
Clearly, you are not the only one. All right, we're going to take one final break and be right back with Zach Plant talking about cannabis-induced psychosis. Stay tuned. Welcome back to Healthy Living, and we're talking with Zach Plant about recovery from marijuana addiction. Zach, let's talk about the THC content of marijuana. You smoked marijuana, but we all know that there are a lot of those edibles out there. How potent is marijuana these days? And is it getting more potent?
Right. So I'm no scientist, but a lot of people you will hear say, kids today aren't smoking their parents' marijuana. basically. The industry's boomed. I don't think anybody can dispute that. And just over time, it's become way stronger. Science has figured out more ways to consume this one product, whether they put it in food, candy, put it in concentrated oils that can be vaped, as well as just the regular marijuana that you get has been, breeded together in such a way that the output is way higher than it's ever been, and I believe that it's only getting stronger, especially whenever the concentrated oil is being vaped. People would have to do their own research at exactly how that works, but as you can go to a gas station now where I live, and you will find a vape pen that has, we call them carts, or dab pens, and it will have like 50 times the potency of just smoking regular marijuana, which is, you can imagine, super detrimental to someone's health. And that's definitely what happened in my case.
All right. Well, unfortunately, we are out of time, but this has been very eye-opening. And we really appreciate your sharing your testimony and are so happy and proud of you for turning your life around. Zach Plant, we do appreciate this an extremely important interview. Thank you so much for being with us today.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me, Lori.
All right. And thank you for tuning in to this edition of Healthy Living. I'm Lori Johnson. We'll see you again next week. Take care now. Bye-bye.